I was betrayed. Someone hurt me so badly that even when I'm lying down, it feels like a knife is stuck in my back. These scary words came from a secret interview tape by Lorne Greene, the actor known for being calm and kind in old Hollywood movies. The tape appeared online for just a few hours before it disappeared forever, and it shocked everyone who heard it. In the video, Greene wasn't the sweet father figure from the TV show Bonanza anymore. Instead, he was a man full of anger, ready to talk about the people who hurt him the most. In the tape, Greene spoke in a tired, strained voice. He said that people who were supposed to be his friends, coworkers, or even like family turned out to be mean and cruel. Some people ruined his biggest career opportunity right when he was about to become super successful. Others spread nasty lies about him that almost destroyed his good reputation overnight. Even worse, some people he had helped and protected ended up stabbing him in the back just to steal his money. So who were these people? In this video, we're going to talk about the names Greene hated until the very end of his life. You'll get to see a side of Lorne Greene that fans never knew about. John Wayne, when the movie legend started a fight Lorne Greene never forgot. The problems between Lorne Greene and John Wayne started in a weird way. They never had big fights, never stared angrily at each other on set, and never said mean things to each other. What caused the trouble was how Hollywood was changing in the late 1960s. Old-fashioned movies where John Wayne had been a star since a film called Stagecoach in 1939 were slowly being replaced by a new type of entertainment: television. Bonanza, the show starring Lorne Greene, became the biggest example of this change. Millions and millions of people watched it every week, and it became even more popular than many movies. Two different worlds, two different ways of working, and two different types of influence accidentally pulled Greene and Wayne into an argument they never started. The big problem happened on April 14, 1966. John Wayne was at a fancy hotel called the Beverly Hills Hotel for a press event to promote his new movie, El Dorado. The room was packed with reporters from famous magazines and newspapers like Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, and Los Angeles Herald-Examiner. A reporter asked Wayne a question that seemed simple. Would the popularity of TV Western shows make movie Westerns less special? Wayne answered quickly into the microphone that TV Westerns were making the Western genre weaker. The media quickly twisted his words to make it sound like he was attacking Bonanza. Within just a few hours, Wayne's comments were all over newspapers from San Francisco to Denver. For Greene, who read the article on the morning of April 17, 1966, in his dressing room at Paramount Stage 10, the feeling wasn't anger. It was like he couldn't breathe. He didn't want to be dragged into a fight between movies and TV, and he definitely didn't want to be put against a huge star like Wayne. His Bonanza co-star Dan Blocker remembered that Greene slammed the newspaper down on the table so hard that a makeup bottle fell to the floor. He wasn't mad at Wayne. He was upset because Wayne had accidentally created a media storm that came crashing down on Greene in just one night. By April 20th, NBC had gotten over 200 letters from people asking Greene to stand up for television. The Bonanza crew had to have a special meeting just to figure out how to deal with the press. Greene, who always stayed calm and composed, felt like his reputation was being dragged into a debate he never even spoke about. The tension didn't go away. In August 1967, a newspaper called the Chicago Tribune published a shocking article titled "Greene and Wayne Face Off in Palm Springs." The article said the two men were seen at a fundraising event in Palm Springs, standing near each other in a super tense atmosphere, like a string about to snap. There were no photos, but just the hint of it was enough for rumors to spread on local news channels. Bonanza was thrown into chaos, and the director had to call an emergency meeting to calm everyone down. Greene wasn't angry at Wayne personally. He was angry at how the media turned their silence into a conflict, making two men who didn't even have problems with each other into symbols of opposing sides. This frustration simmered for years and got even worse in February 1971 when Playboy magazine published a long interview with John Wayne. Even though the interview didn't mention Greene or Bonanza, newspapers like New York Magazine and Chicago Sun-Times deliberately created a comparison. Wayne was strong. Greene was calm. Wayne represented the real Wild West. Greene represented the prettier TV version of the Western. The media blew this fake fight way out of proportion. By March 12, 1971, in an NBC meeting, Greene had to ask his assistant to filter out any article with Wayne's name in it so he wouldn't be dragged into this ongoing mess. But behind all that frustration was something deeper that few people knew about. Greene had been a radio announcer during World War II for a Canadian station called CBC. He had to read daily reports about soldiers who died in the war, and it haunted him to deliver such heartbreaking news to millions of Canadian families. This experience made him really respect people who actually served in the military. So when the press called Wayne a symbol of warrior spirit, even though Wayne never actually served in World War II, Greene felt something was wrong. He never publicly criticized Wayne, but people close to him said Greene sometimes looked uncomfortable when the media kept calling Wayne America's hero without mentioning this fact. Even though this opposition never turned into a real fight, it made Greene nervous every time Wayne's name came up. For Greene, Wayne wasn't an enemy, but he was a source of long-lasting annoyance, enough to make Greene keep his distance. Greene felt that whether Wayne meant to or not, he always managed to drag Greene's name into stories Greene wanted nothing to do with. As the media pressure grew, Greene started to realize that this time in Hollywood wasn't just about the battle between movies and television. It was about one generation replacing another. What surprised him was that soon after, a new wave of competition from Europe started flooding into the United States. A young actor from Italy arrived and helped create a new kind of cowboy style, one that Greene would find even scarier than all the noise Wayne had created. Chapter 2: Clint Eastwood, the man who made Greene feel pushed out of his own time. The tension in Lorne Greene's heart had been building since early summer 1966, and nobody on the Bonanza team was ready for it. On July 1st, a movie called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly premiered at a theater in New York called the Criterion. In just over 10 days, box office reports showed the film was quickly becoming #1 across the country. This didn't confuse Greene, but what really hit him hard was an article in Time magazine on July 23rd. The magazine used 4 whole pages to talk about Clint Eastwood, calling him the man who brought the spirit of the Wild West into the new era. The last sentence of the article left Greene stunned. This is the type of cowboy who survives not on moral ideals but on sheer survival instincts. Greene had played Ben Cartwright for nearly 10 years, the perfect father, the emotional heart of the entire Ponderosa Ranch. But in just one sentence from Time magazine, Greene realized that Hollywood was shifting to something completely different, rougher, colder, and no longer based on the moral values of his time. The atmosphere got even heavier when the Los Angeles Times published an analysis on August 12, 1966, by a critic named Jack Moffat. The article compared Greene to the overly safe symbol of television, while Eastwood was the explosion that changed the face of the cowboy genre. Within 24 hours, more than 30 local newspapers quoted the piece, turning Greene and Eastwood into complete opposites in the public's eyes. Greene, usually so calm, was clearly unhappy to see his name used as the example of the old, outdated era. By the end of August that year, Greene walked onto the Paramount Stage 16 set with a heavy heart. Some crew members remembered that he rarely brought newspapers onto set, but that day he carried several folded copies. Without saying a word, everyone could see he was struggling with the feeling of being pushed aside. Bonanza was still the top-rated show, but those articles made him realize big changes were coming. That shift became real pressure in 1968. In September, NBC sent an internal report to the production leaders saying that viewers under 30 were starting to prefer new Western styles. That same year, a movie called Hang 'Em High starring Clint Eastwood dominated the box office for over a month. On October 18, 1968, during an NBC meeting at Burbank Studio, a director bluntly said, The audience is looking for something grittier. Michael Landon remembered that when Greene heard this, he sat completely still, but his hand clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. For Greene, Eastwood wasn't a rival. He was the symbol of a door closing in front of him. Everything Greene stood for, discipline, morals, the father figure image, started to feel strange and out of place in the rapidly changing entertainment world. The tension became even worse when Eastwood started directing movies in the early 1970s. On December 23, 1971, Dirty Harry was released and instantly became a cultural phenomenon. Even though it wasn't a Western, Eastwood's cold, silent attitude made audiences see him as the new leading man of the era. The media immediately jumped on this contrast. In 1972, at least 16 articles compared Eastwood with TV Western stars. Worst of all, TV Guide in March 1. 972 compared Greene and Eastwood with the phrase, "One belongs to yesterday, the other to tomorrow." Greene didn't respond publicly, but people close to him said that from that point on, he started bringing magazines into the dressing room only to turn the pages he didn't want to read face down on the table. Every time this happened, the room fell silent. For Greene, silence was how he buried the words that hurt him the most. The media didn't stop there. From 1969 to 1972, the press kept reporting on Eastwood's personal scandals and contract disputes. Even though Greene absolutely didn't want to be involved in his colleagues' private life, many articles still created a contrast. Greene is reserved, Eastwood is free-spirited. Having his name used as background scenery for unrelated stories made Greene feel like he was being turned into just a prop, something he had never experienced in his career. Many NBC editors later remembered that from 1972 onward, Greene started refusing to attend meetings about new audience trends. He knew Eastwood's name would come up again and would be compared to the decline of Greene's era. Ironically, Greene didn't hate Clint Eastwood. What he hated was the feeling that Eastwood symbolized an era he no longer fit into. That feeling ate away at Greene in silence, just as Bonanza entered its most troubled years with internal conflicts, creative struggles, staff changes, and subtle tensions within the Cartwright family on set, problems that were even more intense than the competition outside Hollywood. Michael Landon, the rebellious son who wanted to take the father's spot on screen. For many years, Lorne Greene kept a steady routine on Bonanza like a perfect clock. Every morning, he arrived at Paramount Stage 16 at 7:40 a.m., earlier than everyone else on the crew. He would chat with the post-production team, check the props, check in with the lighting department, all to make sure the show ran smoothly. But by the end of 1966, something new started happening at Ponderosa, and that something was his most beloved TV son, Michael Landon. Landon joined Bonanza in 1959 as a young, excited, fun actor who was always joking around behind the scenes. But by the end of 1966, he started to change how he worked. Around November, Landon began writing small stories about his young character's journey. He didn't tell Greene or the veteran writers about it. When NBC approved the draft and put Michael Landon's name on the script for the February 5, 1967 episode, the whole crew was shocked. Greene read the assignment sheet in the script room, and that was when he realized that the creative power, which had always belonged to him and the veteran writers, was now being shared with the younger generation. By 1968, script meetings were becoming increasingly tense. Sometimes within just the first few minutes, you could feel two opposing ideas crashing against each other. Landon wanted Bonanza to shift to a more emotional storytelling style, focusing on pain, breakthroughs, and personal conflicts. Greene didn't oppose change completely, but he believed that Bonanza had to keep its original spirit, family values, honesty, and the moral lessons that millions of viewers watched every weekend. From there, the two started viewing each other's ideas with suspicion. When Landon suggested giving more screen time to the younger characters, Greene saw it as moving away from the heart of the show. When Greene suggested keeping the old structure, Landon saw it as a barrier that could make Bonanza fall behind the changes happening in late 1960s American television. This hidden tension exploded in June 1972 when Landon finished the draft for an episode called Forever. This episode pushed the younger characters to the emotional front, while Ben Cartwright only appeared as a symbolic figure. One writer in the room that day remembered that Greene stared at the first page for a long time, so quietly that you could hear the air conditioning. He then put the draft down and left the room without saying a word. That silence spoke louder than any argument they ever had. During this time, creative meetings often stretched late into the night. In several July meetings, Greene and Landon would sit across from each other for hours, with neither willing to give in. One believed the show had to grow up to meet new tastes, while the other believed Bonanza would lose its soul if it changed too much. This confrontation didn't turn into shouting matches, but it created a thick, heavy atmosphere whenever the two entered the same room. The pressure didn't just appear behind the scenes, it also affected real life. From 1969 to 1973, Michael Landon was constantly featured in major entertainment magazines like Photoplay, National Enquirer, and Movie Mirror. Even television programs like Inside Hollywood tracked his every move. Stories about his lifestyle, relationships, and rumors kept Landon's name in the headlines for years. Greene, who usually avoided personal gossip, found himself dragged into chaos he hadn't chosen. After every article about Landon, NBC would ask Greene to visit the PR room to agree on a response in case reporters asked questions. Greene didn't blame Landon personally, but this constant disturbance made him feel like he was losing control, not just of his work, but of his own image. The important thing is that the two didn't hate each other personally. Landon admired Greene from the beginning. Greene cared for Landon like a son, but love couldn't prevent conflict when they were on opposite ends of the creative spectrum. Greene tried to preserve the old fortress, while Landon wanted to break down the walls and build something new. Both believed they were protecting Bonanza, and that belief made the distance between them impossible to bridge. Many crew members remember that in 1971 and 1972, whenever Greene and Landon were in the same meeting room, everyone sat up straight. The air was as heavy as stone, no loud noises, but the look in both their eyes said everything. Every creative decision became a tug-of-war, and every episode became proof of the power shifting toward Landon. By the final season of Bonanza in 1972, Landon had almost become the creative soul of the entire show. Greene remained the central figure on screen, but behind the scenes, the young little Joe had become the one steering the ship. Greene understood this, and in the final months of the show, he would sit for long periods in the dressing room before each scene, as though reminding himself to accept an uncomfortable truth. The exhaustion from his ongoing battle with Michael Landon drained half of Greene's energy. But what came next made him even more cautious. Just as internal tensions were rising, a face from the outside appeared, bringing a storm of rumors and noise that forced Greene to be on guard from the very first moment this person walked into Ponderosa. Guy Williams, the man who brought chaos directly to Ponderosa. In the fall of 1967, while Bonanza was in its most stable period at Paramount Stage 12, an unexpected announcement from NBC brought the entire crew together. Guy Williams would appear in a special episode. On the surface, this seemed normal, but to those who had followed Hollywood news for the previous 2 years, Williams's appearance was like a dark cloud approaching. The reason wasn't Williams's talent. He had been popular since his time playing Zorro. The problem was the series of controversies surrounding his departure from Disney in 1965. Months-long contract disputes covered by the Los Angeles Times, Variety, and even TV Guide painted Williams as unstable and difficult to work with. In 1960s Hollywood, even being associated with such a situation could make people wary for years. So as soon as NBC announced this new collaboration, a flood of questions from the press turned immediately to Lorne Greene. Some journalists tried to dig into the idea that Greene didn't like working with strong personalities, bringing up old articles about Williams's messy breakup with Disney. Even though Greene kept his attitude polite in interviews around November that year, people close to him said he started feeling uncomfortable the moment he was pulled into a story that had nothing to do with him. This discomfort grew quickly when Williams arrived on set on December 3, 1967. He didn't show up alone. He was followed by a group of paparazzi, including reporters from the Hollywood Citizen News. They weren't there for Bonanza. They were there to see how Williams had resurrected his career after his controversial departure from Disney. Greene, who had always protected the peaceful environment of Ponderosa, became furious when filming had to be stopped so security could clear out the press. For Greene, the set was a sacred space, and he wouldn't tolerate any disruptions that could break the smooth rhythm he had maintained for over a decade. The days that followed saw tensions rise between them. Williams, known for paying close attention to details, often demanded to reshoot scenes if he felt the expression wasn't right. This was the complete opposite of Greene's approach. He preferred to keep things moving and avoid delays. In the first week, at least 3 scenes had to be reshot multiple times for the episode, frustrating Greene to the point that he left the set earlier than usual. A crew member remembered that every time Greene walked past Williams, the air grew cold, as though they were standing at opposite ends of the same movie set. They never had loud arguments, but it was the tense silence that caught everyone's attention. Greene started to keep his distance, only talking to Williams when absolutely necessary. Williams, sensing this coldness, became more cautious, leading to awkward scenes when they had to work together. Bonanza, famous for its on-screen friendship and teamwork, now found itself at a point where the separation between Greene and Williams was so obvious that some crew members described it as if they were filming 2 different shows on the same stage. By the end of January 1968, when the episodes featuring Williams were finished, the atmosphere on Ponderosa slowly returned to peace. But the story of those chaotic days continued to be passed around the set, becoming one of the moments when Greene lost his patience the most since Bonanza began. Even though no one specifically blamed anyone, both Greene and Williams left that period with a heavy feeling. Greene thought of Williams's appearance as an awkward storm, while Williams felt like he had never truly been welcomed. The tensions Williams brought were just the beginning of bigger challenges Bonanza would face in the coming years. What's most striking is that compared to what came after, Williams's disruptions almost seemed like a gentle breeze before the real storms hit Ponderosa. Parnell Roberts, the rebel within the Cartwright house. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. The exhaustion Lorne Greene had to endure from Parnell Roberts didn't come from a single fight, but from a 6-year-long rebellion that began during the 2nd season of Bonanza in 1960. The crew at Paramount Stage 12 remembers that there wasn't a day when Parnell didn't complain about something. And what was most striking was that every complaint was aimed directly at the core of the show Greene carried on his shoulders. Roberts had his own artistic views. He wanted Bonanza to be more realistic, grittier, and more down-to-earth. However, the show was built around the image of Ben Cartwright as a strong, idealistic father, sometimes too perfect. This made Roberts feel the character system was unbalanced and unfair. In an interview with the San Francisco Chronicle in 1963, he bluntly said that many episodes were like modern-day fairy tales. This statement sparked a wave of controversy, pulling Greene into the spotlight even though he had never stirred up trouble himself. What frustrated Greene the most wasn't that Roberts criticized the show, it was that he criticized the very image of the father character, Cartwright. Roberts repeatedly claimed that Greene's character had too much power in every decision, which made his own character, Adam Cartwright, appear pale and weak. This created a gap between the two that couldn't be crossed. Script meetings in late 1964 often turned into tense situations. Greene remained calm on the outside, but underneath he was frustrated by having to constantly face criticism aimed directly at a character he had dedicated his life to building. Roberts also had a complex personal life that fueled the controversy even more. His open opposition to some social policies and frequent appearances at debate events made the press call him Hollywood's most unpredictable star. This linked Bonanza, which was meant to be a family show, to a series of political analyses that Greene found really annoying. This situation continued until 1965 when Roberts refused to participate in several promotional events and suddenly missed a charity game in Las Vegas with the cast. NBC asked Greene to explain things to the press, even though he had nothing to do with Roberts's decisions. This was the moment Greene realized Roberts's rebellion was no longer a personal issue. It was a burden falling on him. When Roberts left Bonanza in 1965 and later returned for a few special episodes, many people thought the conflict had ended. But behind the scenes, it said that whenever a reporter mentioned Parnell Roberts's name, Greene's gaze would shift away. He never hated Roberts, but the exhaustion Roberts created was something Greene didn't want to carry again. However, the tension on set didn't just come from rebels. Sometimes it came from the closest people, those who Greene both cared for and found difficult at times. Dan Blocker, the gentle giant with antics that made Greene helpless. If Parnell Roberts brought intellectual debates full of tension, Dan Blocker was a completely different kind of trouble. It wasn't an ideological conflict, but a clash of personalities, one being the epitome of seriousness, while the other was the source of laughter and fun. Dan Blocker always brought a sense of fun to the set. He was tall, enthusiastic, and became the life of many filming sessions. But it was this easygoing nature that often frustrated Greene. Greene always arrived on set on time, sometimes even 30 minutes early, to check his costume, rehearse his lines, and talk with the director. Blocker, on the other hand, was completely different. He usually showed up exactly on time for filming, and sometimes even a few minutes late because he stopped to chat or help someone on his way to the set. One story often told was from March 1963 when the crew was filming an important scene on Paramount Stage 17. Blocker showed up 10 minutes late because he had stopped to sign autographs for a group of visitors. Greene kept silent while filming, but immediately aft. Roared, he walked into the dressing room and closed the door. Dan Blocker knew he had upset Greene, but his nature didn't change for long, and these clashes continued for years. Blocker also had a habit of cracking jokes even during serious scenes, which made Greene, who always wanted to maintain emotional stability in front of the camera, lose his patience. Especially in 1965 and 1968, when the work schedule was so heavy that Greene was easily stressed. Blocker's unintentional antics often made Greene visibly uneasy. However, this conflict never turned into hatred. Crew members described Greene as not disliking Blocker, but at times Blocker seemed like a big child that made him sigh. The root cause was the difference in personalities, and the result was just a few quiet hours after each time Blocker went overboard. But this impatience also spoke to something deeper. Greene had to carry the entire weight of the show for many years, and any behavior that broke his rhythm made him uncomfortable. Blocker never intentionally caused trouble, but his carefree attitude became a test of Greene's patience in many moments. The stories with Blocker and Roberts show that Greene not only dealt with media pressure or competition over image, but also had to struggle within his own screen family. These challenges continued to lead Greene to further clashes, where powerful people behind the scenes created truly unpredictable tremors. David Dortort, the TV mogul who forced Greene to stand in the middle of the storm. We're still in Paramount before I moved to Warner Brothers. We're shooting night for night on the street, so it has to be dark, you know, and it was late and Rose had called and said, "When will I be home?" I said, "I'll probably be home at 8:00. No one on the Bonanza set feared any actor. They feared David Dortort. Since the series started in 1959 on the Paramount lot, Dortort had earned a reputation as NBC's most demanding producer. He closely watched every detail, from the color of Ben Cartwright's shirt to the timing of every scene's dialogue. His control became extreme from 1963 to 1969, when Bonanza was the #1 show in the ratings, and Dortort was determined to keep the crown at any cost. The most intense atmosphere was recorded in February 1964. During a script meeting in Room 2C at Paramount, Dortort shouted so loudly because he wasn't satisfied with the new draft. One person in the room revealed that his shouting was so loud it echoed through the hallway, causing the technicians outside to fall completely silent. Lorne Greene, usually calm, found himself in an awkward position as he stood in the middle. On one side, Dortort was erupting in anger, and on the other side, the young writer was nervously clutching a script. Greene had never liked conflict, but was always dragged into the center of it. Whenever Michael Landon and Dortort disagreed on the direction of Joe Cartwright's character, Greene was called into the room to mediate and calm things down. When Parnell Roberts demanded a change in the script in 1962, Dortort asked Greene to convince him to calm down. The way Dortort referred to Roberts as him showed the level of tension he had with the cast. Meetings like these wore Greene out in ways no one saw. He would often leave the Paramount lot at 8:00 p.m., much later than his colleagues, just to clean up the emotional aftermath of each tense meeting. One crew member remembered that Greene would often stand in the hallway to calm himself before going back to set. This was something no one had ever seen in him before Dortort turned the meeting room into a battlefield. Dortort wasn't without his professional reputation issues. In 1967, The Hollywood Reporter published an analysis of his dictatorial work style as he simultaneously ran Bonanza and another show called The High Chaparral. Both series were successful, but rumors kept circulating about the tension between the actors during production. What frustrated Greene the most was that Dortort always saw him as the shock absorber, the person who absorbed everyone else's stress. When there was a dispute, Greene was the first person called into the room. When there were issues with the filming schedule, Greene was also the one asked to calm the crew. This made Greene feel like he wasn't just playing Ben Cartwright on screen, but was expected to act as the father figure for the entire team in real life too. The pressure didn't make Greene hate Dortort, but it made him cautious and wary every time an unexpected meeting was called. And when Greene was already worn out from the pressures from above, he was faced with a story completely unrelated to Bonanza, one that dragged him into a scandal he had no connection to at all. Mitchell Ryan, the unknown name that created an aftershock for Greenes. Mitchell Ryan had almost no direct connection to Bonanza. Yet when his scandal broke in 1968, Lorne Greene had to suffer its aftershocks anyway. Ryan was a well-known actor in the ABC series Dark Shadows. In late March 1969, news of his dismissal from the show spread across major newspapers like the New York Daily News, the Boston Globe, and the Chicago Tribune. His personal life at the time sparked much gossip, especially regarding his trouble on set, which forced ABC's production team to make a tough decision to keep production running smoothly. This scandal spread to Universal Television, where Bonanza was produced. Universal executives feared that similar incidents could affect the smooth running of their other series. Just 2 weeks after Mitchell Ryan's incident, Universal issued a new set of studio-wide discipline regulations. Every production received a 12-page guide on April 12, 1969. What bothered Greene wasn't the regulations themselves. It was how the media used his name to get views. A reporter from the Los Angeles Free Press asked directly during a press conference in May 1969, "Are you concerned that the Bonanza crew will encounter the same trouble as the Dark Shadows crew?" Even though the question seemed harmless, it made Greene feel like he was being unfairly implicated in something that had nothing to do with him. Greene always avoided personal gossip, but at that time the press was using the stories of TV stars to create hot topics and headlines. Whenever there was a new controversy, even if completely unrelated, Bonanza and Greene's name would be dragged into articles for comparison. This made him uncomfortable, especially when his name was tied to the scandal of someone he had never even met. Some Universal staffers remembered that Greene asked NBC's press department to limit his involvement in press conferences that weren't directly related to the show. This rare request showed that Greene was truly upset about being forced to answer questions that weren't his responsibility to respond to. The Mitchell-Ryan scandal didn't create outright hatred, but it caused a lingering frustration for Greene. He didn't want to be dragged into someone else's scandal, especially one from a series completely separate from Bonanza. But Hollywood at the time didn't give Greene the privilege to avoid the media, and even a small mistake from a stranger was enough to make him the center of unwanted attention. This exhaustion made Greene realize that not only the rebels within the crew were causing him headaches. Sometimes just a name in the news was enough to make his life far more complicated than it needed to be. Perhaps we will never know exactly how much sorrow Lorne Greene had to swallow behind the scenes of Hollywood, or how many times he had to stay silent to maintain the image of the perfect father on screen. But when that final tape of his life was leaked, it showed that behind the kind smile and composed appearance, Greene too had been hurt deeply, carrying bitterness throughout the rest of his life. The names we've mentioned were not just co-stars, they were dark milestones carved deeply into his journey. If you want to hear more untold stories from Hollywood's golden age, don't forget to leave a comment below to let me know what interests you most. Click subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next video. We have many more secrets waiting to be unraveled.